Hello, welcome to DecentraLounge, brought to you by GlobalStake, your institutional SOC 2 Type 2 certified, truly decentralized bare metal staking service provider. In this episode, we're joined by Jack Krevitt, principal at One Roundtable Partners and 10T Holdings, the largest crypto-only growth equity fund in the world, with $1.5 billion in AUM and in the process of launching their fifth fund, 50T. Jack is also the head of strategy at Zenrock Foundation. At Zenrock, he's helping pioneer Zen BTC, a fully Bitcoin-backed, yield-generating wrapped Bitcoin asset that allows users to maintain full ownership and custody of their Bitcoin, yet operates seamlessly across DeFi on Solana while passively earning yield. With a background in FX and global fixed income markets at Lazard Asset Management, Jack now bridges traditional finance and decentralized innovation. We'll explore Jack's journey from macro markets to DeFi and how Zenrock's decentralized custody and cross-chain infrastructure are reshaping Bitcoin's role in the digital asset ecosystem. Jack, we're thrilled to have you on today as our guest. So why don't we just start from the very beginning? How did you get involved in this crazy, wonderful world of Web3? And tell us that story.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thank you guys, first of all, for having me on. So I think I got involved in Web3 much like the way most people did. 2017, saw Bitcoin absolutely rallying like crazy. And as someone who is, an investor and deep in the world of finance, I was just blown away by this asset and had to learn more and just kind of continue to learn more and more about it. And, at the time, I was working, as you mentioned, in foreign exchange and in the fixed income world, and in the traditional fund management world, there's so much middle office type work where you have to kind of get things set up. You have to do all these different payments, especially in the fixed income world. And what I noticed is that despite the fact that there are some examples where we're literally still mailing things like in 2024 2025 we're mailing things, which is crazy. But even to the extent that these things were done on the internet, the actual infrastructure was still living way in the past. So we're sending an email, but at the end of the day, nothing has actually changed but for the fact that it was communicated through email in terms of the way things are run, as the way it was done in like the 80s. And that was really my like crypto aha moment of like, oh, I totally see how with a centralized or a decentralized ledger that everyone can agree on that this is the source of truth, we can do things so much more efficiently. And kind of once I got to the point of realizing the power of what was being built here, I knew I had to jump in. And that really brought me to joining with 10T, first on the investment side, and then now taking a large role in Zenrock as well, on the operator side. So it's been a lot of fun. And besides that, working in crypto is a lot more fun than traditional markets. So that's an added benefit.
Definitely. What was that transition like for you then? Because I know, coming from that institutional financial background and then now being that shift over to the operator side with Zenrock, was that difficult? Was it invigorating? What's that been like just for you? And how have you had to kind of juggle the two different worlds?
Yeah. So first of all, coming from like TradFi to crypto, I think probably a lot of the people listening have done that. But it's a very freeing experience, I think, because the TradFi world is just structured so much, and in crypto, you have so much ability to just kind of find your own path, and things are being built so quickly in real time that you can really make your own destiny. I think much more so than at a bank. But then, yeah, when I originally joined 10T, it was just purely as an investor, and I didn't think that there would be an operational component at all. And pretty much I joined and was asked to do more and more on the operating side, and the more I did it, the more I really liked it, and found that I think it really played to my strengths. So I've been just diving deeper and deeper into that as time went on. Still doing a lot on the fun side as well, really wearing those two hats. And one thing that I find, and I think this is true for our fund generally, but for me as well, is you know being so on the ground in DeFi has made us better investors at 50T. And that has kind of allowed us to see, some things that maybe the narrative looks really strong, but then actually on the ground, it's not so much, right? And the reverse as well. And then I think that on the flip side, seeing the kind of fundraising side and living in that world as an investor, I think has given a lot of benefits to Zenrock, to kind of have that perspective of, how does capital flow around in the space, and kind of what what is the thing that drives companies to that next level, and the companies that kind of don't make it, what are the pitfalls that they fall in?
I'm one of those people who came from TradFi as well, so similar perspective. And I think, like you said, it was freeing coming into Web3, the lack of structure. But at the same time, there's still a balance needed, especially as the space matures and more institutional players come into the landscape. And that's something we're preaching at GlobalStake. And this may lead you into talking a little bit more about what you're doing now, building with Zenrock. But do you find the lack of structure in the companies building out the space have influenced what you invest in and what you build in, because you have that perspective of what's needed?
Yeah, no, I think the lack of structure point is it is a double-edged sword, and it's why I think there's so much FUD in this space is because of how permissionless and open it is. People build really bad stuff, and they build a lot of vaporware and kind of market it in ways that really wouldn't be possible without the ability to access capital so quickly in a company lifecycle. Tokenization has allowed for these companies to access capital without even any semblance of a product, right? Where typically, you would think about that event to access public capital wouldn't happen until an IPO. So you're moving something that typically only happens for companies that have really hit product market fit, have typically have hundreds of millions in recurring revenue over multiple years. And you're saying, okay, now a company that has absolutely none of those things can launch a token, and potentially have its value run on speculation to levels where it kind of has no basis in reality. And then the other piece that I would say on that is that uh, you know there is not nearly as much of a clear value capture for tokens as there is for equity. So we've been doing equity for like 100 years. People, or longer, people know kind of how this works and what to expect. And there's extremely clear legal framework around equities. Tokens, obviously, we don't have any of that legal framework. Um, and on top of that, it's not so clear what the right way to have value capture for tokens is, and many companies are doing it very differently. So we see that at the fund level as a major opportunity, because we think that this kind of chaos breeds opportunity for those who do the work and really understand what's going on. But it is kind of reason to pause and be extra careful as a token investor.
Makes a ton of sense. Why don't we dig in a little bit to Zenrock and talk about this? Was it something like, maybe the backstory? Was this a project that was incubated under the confines of 10T, or is it something that you guys just kind of went and bought the company because you like what they were building, and then you got involved as it became sort of important on the operational side, and then maybe we'll dig into what Zenrock actually does and Zen BTC as well.
Yeah. So the team of Zenrock and the story of Zenrock spins out of Qredo, which was kind of a big project in like the 2019, 2020, 2021 era. And 10T had invested in that business. And during the trough of the bear market, that business just became kind of unsustainable for a variety of reasons. And so, 10T saw the opportunity to kind of go in and say, well, these assets are extremely valuable. There's no one investing in this space right now. I mean, we're talking at the absolute bottom of the bottom in 2021. And we can go in and really operate this thing. And Dan Tapiero, the CIO and managing partner of 10T, 1RT, and 50T, has a background in kind of scaling businesses, not just on the fund management side, but also on the kind of operator side. And he said, this technology is extremely valuable, and we can build this ourselves. And so we did, and that kind of is really the story of Zenrock, and how we got to where we are today. But I can dive a little bit into kind of what Zenrock is. So Zenrock is a decentralized custody network, and we use this technology called distributed multi-party computation, or DMPC, to achieve this. And happy to dive into the tech. We can really nerd out on it, but the high level is that we have the ability to create a system where users self-custody the assets. So you never have to give over custody of the assets. However, the different applications can have different policies or locks on those assets. So even though you custody it, you don't have complete control to do whatever you want with it. And that kind of paradigm allows for a lot of really innovative things. And so what we're doing is we have created this generalized infrastructure where you can use DMPC for a wide variety of uses. It's completely permissionless and open. But we're taking the approach of, instead of just building the infrastructure, we want to kind of go upstream and then build the product as well. So we have built the first product on ZR Chain. ZR Chain is kind of the app chain that has where all of this resides, and that product is Zen BTC. So Zen BTC is a wrapped Bitcoin liquid restaking token on Solana, and so we use this DMPC technology to allow people to mint Zen BTC, remain kind of the owner of that wallet, where their actual BTC is held on the Bitcoin blockchain. So we never take custody. But when they mint Zen BTC, they can't then transfer that BTC somewhere else until they redeem the Zen BTC, and then they kind of regain the ability to transfer that freely, as if it's the system is over. And what we've done is we've worked with EigenLayer, and now we're integrating with Qredo as well, to create this source of yield for the BTC that earns passively for the users. So very similar to how Qredo Sol is structured, where you hold a Qredo Sol in your wallet and you don't do anything, and you just get the validator rewards. Similar to that, you hold a Zen BTC in your wallet, and it's like you're holding Bitcoin, but you're also earning these restaking rewards passively. And the way that it's structured is that, so if you mint one Zen BTC, you wait a while, and you go to redeem it. When you redeem that one Zen BTC, you're going to get more than one BTC. So the amount of yield is just automatically passed through to the users in the form of Bitcoin without them having to do anything. So in the simplest form, you buy it, you wait a period of time, you come back, and you have more sats than you started with, which we think is a very appealing proposition to users. And then on top of that, you can go and use Zen BTC across DeFi however you want. So we really are, creating this asset that has much higher capital efficiency for the users and much more flexibility, especially for those who are on chain and really know how to optimize these things.
So 2 quick follow-up questions. One, what does the yield look like for Zen BTC? And there's like a current sort of APY that it's earning. And then 2, let's say you're someone who didn't actually make the deposit into the protocol itself, but you maybe take profits from some Solana position and you acquire Zen BTC. Is a clock start then for earning the APY? Is it just something where it's the longer it's held in a wallet that when you go to redeem it and take it back out as native Bitcoin, like how does that come into play? Because this seems like a really, really interesting use case for what you guys have built.
Yeah, those are both great questions. I think on the first one, we're so early in the restaking market that it's very difficult to know exactly what restaking yield is going to be when you get to some sort of a more like steady state. EigenLayer just turned on slashing, just recently, and almost, I think the vast majority of their AVSs don't have any slashing or any rewards. It's still kind of in that beta phase where everyone is kind of okay, not really getting any yield, because they know that the yield is going to come at some point in the future. we're very much of the view that that will probably persist for a little bit longer. But then, these protocols that are gaining shared security via these restaking protocols, the users who are providing that shared security are going to start demanding yield very soon. And if they don't, they're just going to simply leave the platform and say, well, what am I doing this for? And so I don't have a super strong answer on like exactly what the yield is going to be, but our view is that, Bitcoin is and this is a view that we have, across the board, that Bitcoin is just the best collateral there is globally out of all assets. So if you are a restaking, or if you are a some sort of actively validated system or Qredo NCN, and you want collateral for your service, Bitcoin is the best, and we believe will command a premium over much more volatile, kind of less reliable tokens. Not to say that other forms of collateral aren't good, but Bitcoin is just the best. So we believe that whatever the yield kind of shakes out on other things, Bitcoin should be higher. But again, we'll have to see how the market plays out on that front to get what those levels will be. And then, I mean, the only other piece I'd say on that is that we still allow, with Zen BTC, you still have the ability to use it throughout DeFi however you want. So even if it's not a massive blowout amount of yield, if you're going to have a Bitcoin position on Solana, why not also have some level of yield associated with it, right? And then to your other question, this is really a strength of DMPC. The fact that the same user who mints the token does not have to redeem that exact same token. So yes, you can, as a user, simply go to Jupiter and acquire Zen BTC. You don't have to mint it yourself. It's actually my view that the vast majority of people will acquire it that way rather than actually going through the minting process, just because it just seems like the easier thing to do. And we believe that Zen BTC will be used to a large extent, as a rotation asset, right? So if you're trading, very highly volatile things, and you believe for whatever reason that the market's going to go down, and your alts are going to get crushed, well, you can rotate into stables, which I think is what the majority of people do. But we also believe there's a lot of situations where it makes a lot of sense to rotate into Bitcoin, and people do that right now through sexes, but don't have really the ability to do it directly on Solana, where they're doing the majority of their trading. So this is kind of creating that option for them. And just in terms of the way that the calculation works, the yield will always be reflected in the price. So if you buy, it's the same thing as when you buy Qredo Sol from someone, all of the accumulated yield is already reflected in that price. When you buy a Zen BTC, all the accumulated yield would be in that price already. So your clock in terms of what you earned would kind of start then, but all the accumulated yield is in there already.
Awesome. And I'd like to double down, coming from the go-to-market side myself, on those initial use cases, rotating into the asset during volatile times. But how do you balance the initial user experience? Restaking, staking, these are all new concepts to people entering Web3 for the first time. And so how much do you focus on education for the initial holders? What are you trying to communicate to them as the use cases, the benefits of why they should be holding Zen BTC?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question, and we definitely are spending a lot of time on education. To your point, we are at the bleeding edge of this life cycle, and even to the point of not really knowing exactly what the restaking market is going to look like, because it's just so new. But we believe that one thing that we don't need to do a lot of education on is why own Bitcoin. And the other piece we don't really need to do a lot of education on is why it's convenient to be able to just do everything on one network. So if you're a trader on Solana, you could go through the effort of maybe connecting to a SEX or going through some sort of a complex swapping mechanism to end up with Bitcoin. But we believe that just the ease alone, it creates a lot of value for users. And then kind of the piece that we need to explain and what we're trying to do is that what are the benefits of Zen BTC versus like a CBBTC or some of the other options out there, and those are really primarily, decentralization and truly owning the keys to what you're doing. I mean, it's funny to be so focused on decentralization and then to own your Bitcoin via Coinbase wrapped Bitcoin, where there is no proof of reserves or anything like that we would hold any other company to the standard of needing to do. And then also kind of explaining this yield component, and that is quite obvious to people why that's a benefit once they get to the point of feeling comfortable with the mechanism and how it works. Nothing makes people more comfortable than seeing, a solid amount of TVL. So that is kind of, right now our principal mission is thinking about how we can kind of get to the right people and explain the benefits of what we're doing so that they, get interested in the product.
Awesome. I mean, yes, this is such a nascent market, right? When we think about Bitcoin as a DeFi instrument, we're really just coming into sort of the entire burgeoning of this era. There's a quote a stat I keep quoting just because it's so interesting to me, where it's like 0.3% of Bitcoin is actually used in DeFi. And in the case of ETH, it's like 30%. So it's like 100x opportunity. And to your point, it is the pristine capital. It is something that I think is going to attract major investors. I mean, we just look at the BlackRocks, the Fidelities, everybody else who's pushing into this space, trying to gobble up as much Bitcoin as they can. And then thinking about how do you actually put that capital to work in an efficient way. It's just, you guys have built a heck of a product. So think about, let's maybe extrapolate this to the future a little bit. What do you see coming down the pike, both maybe, through the two lenses in which you operate? Obviously, the fund side and sort of this institutional push into the space. And then, of course, like what Zenrock is building and Zen BTC as a product. Let's just touch on that, like some future trends you're looking forward to exploring in the coming months and years.
Yeah. I think that, starting on the Zenrock side, my view, if you look a few years out, is it takes a shape that's very similar to like Layer 0 with Stargate, where they launched the generalized infrastructure, same as us, and then they launched their first application, which was Stargate. And everyone was like, oh, this is really cool. They understood how it worked. And then now people use Layer 0 more generally, not just through Stargate, for tons and tons of applications. It wouldn't surprise me if, more than half of the usage at this point is not through Stargate, right? And I think that we could see a similar thing where Zen BTC proves out kind of the power of DMPC and what we're doing. And then we get, countless other projects building directly on ZR Chain, potentially using other DMPC key-rings that they generate themselves or using the ones that we've created, and kind of doing all sorts of really, really interesting things across DeFi in all sorts of places, while Zen BTC kind of remains the bellwether of all of this and kind of at the center, but not like the only game for Zenrock. And that's kind of what I see on that side. And I think that the more we can grow the generalized infrastructure, the better it will be for Zen BTC in terms of like stronger security guarantees, the more the stronger the network is and the more activity there is. And then just kind of more awareness of like what we're doing when people hear about us from multiple different angles. And I think on the fund side, I think we're going to continue to see this maturing. I think that people, with the new administration, people do kind of understand, okay, this is a step change, but I actually don't think people really quite understand the degree to which it's a step change. And I think that is going, and, I think there was that initial, like around the election, that initial moment of hype, and then nothing happens because things don't happen overnight, right? And now in the next coming months, we're going to really see actual tangible change. And one thing I would call out in terms of what I see around that is a lot more formalization around the way that tokens exist and how they're launched, and kind of the way value is captured at the token level. And I think, again, the way that we kind of, my thinking jumps between the fund and Zenrock. At Zenrock, when we were designing the tokenomics system, we were really thinking about how we can create, a mechanism with value capture from the get-go. And I think for our governance token, Rock, we've really focused on designing it in a way where it's not just, for lack of a better term, like a meme coin that's associated with the project. And we see this all over the place where it's like, wow, we see a project and we're like, this is an amazing project. Their token is skyrocketing in conjunction with the usage of the project. However, when you actually dig into it, there's literally no value capture of the economics of the project with that token. It's just rallying kind of in terms of the hype that people believe that this will someday be associated with it. And I think that is pretty disruptive and destructive for the industry, because ultimately, you're left with people who think that they're getting one thing when in reality they're getting something totally different. So again, with the way that we've done it with the Rock token, is we really thought about that from the get-go. And I think that more projects will kind of follow suit and think about it similarly to the way that we have, where it's like, okay, this asset needs to be truly tied to the ecosystem and kind of the growth for it to have a long-term future. Because, if eventually, although, those things can rally on hype for a period of time, like eventually people do get smart to what's really going on. We've seen time and time again, that when that kind of realization happens, it really devastates the ecosystem. And it's just never worth it to kind of build that way. So we've really thought about that from the ground up. And at the fund level, when we're looking at tokens, that is probably like our primary thought process, is like understanding, who the players are, what the value capture is, and what the future of this ecosystem is going to look like in light of that.
Awesome. And first of all, I want to say, not just what you're building, but the industry as a whole. And I'm sure we could continue this conversation for hours if we wanted to. But for those who do want to follow along, stay connected, stay up to date with any updates. First, what are some of the important dates in the roadmap that we should keep in mind, those who are listening should be aware of? And then two, where can we follow you on social so that we can stay up to date and make sure that we're all connected?
Yeah. So we are really excited after so much development to be, pushing finally live. So you can mint now directly on Solana, using our Zen BTC .app .zenrock.io. But we could link it. But also wherever you buy tokens, you can find Zen BTC on Solana. And yeah, you can follow us at official Zenrock and Zen BTC on Twitter for all the key announcements.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to visit with us, Jack. Really great episode, very enlightening, excited for the future of Zen BTC and Zenrock. So thank you for being a guest. For those of you who have been watching or listening to today's episode of DecentraLounge, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be sure to link those socials so you can get in touch with Jack or the Zenrock team. And we'll see you on the next episode of DecentraLounge. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Hey, thanks for having me.